All right, so I'm just going to describe a little bit more about what my grandpa taught me and also my thought process when I was a communist. So, like I said, in 2013, this is the way I looked at it. I was like a typical Marxist. Like I thought that the white people were the bad guys. I was just looking at Peterson talking. He's talking about the whole victim. Like I thought that the white people, I just thought the white people were the bad guys, and I just wanted to race mix white people. I saw myself as Jewish, and I think I saw the white people as the biggest threat. So one way, like I'll just show like another example. So in the story where Moses is fighting against the Amalekites, Moses puts his arms out, and then Aaron or I think her or someone else holds up his arms, right? And according to Christians, he put himself in the form of the cross, and then he destroys the Amalekites. And the Amalekites, according to my studies, were half Hittite, which is, again, scholars might say something different than what religious people will say, but scholars say that they were Indo-Europeans. So I'm like, okay, good. Yeah. Moses puts his arms out in the form of a cross, and then they defeat the Indo-Europeans. Kind of like when Jesus put himself in the form of the cross, they defeated the Indo-European Romans. So my agenda was to uproot Christianity and say, see, it was just a trick by the Jews to destroy the Indo-Europeans, to defeat them by giving them a religion that says to take care of them. Like Paul says, we gave you spiritual blessings, now you give us material blessings. I was like, it's just a trick. And also Paul's like, now basically give us back Israel, and the Jews will be saved in the end, but not necessarily the Gentiles. So I'm like, see, it was just a trick. It was just a trick to save the Jews. Jesus saved the Jews. Kind of like when Moses puts his arms out in the form of the cross like Jesus, he destroys the Amalekites. In the same way, when Jesus put his arms out in the form of the cross, he destroys the Romans. And I wanted to be like, same thing with Joseph. When Joseph dies and resurrects, he gets sold into slavery, and he's seen as dying. And then he resurrects, and his father says, my son was dead, but now he's alive. But then they end up defeating the Egyptians. And I wanted to see the Pharaoh as Indo-European, right? And it's like, see, it was a death and resurrection, that it was a sacrifice that destroyed the enemy who believed, right? And I was just a communist, so I wanted to destroy Christianity, say it was just a Darwinian trick, all right? And because I wanted to race mix the white people. And this is the way that I looked at it. And this is, people are going to think this is crazy, but, and I wanted what's going on right now. Like I wanted the Arabs to take over, because I liked Islam better than Christianity, even though I didn't like any religion. I thought that all religion was white supremacist, but I liked Islam because it was for race mixing, and it was represented by the people of color. Like people of color tend to be Islam. And I thought, at least if everyone becomes Islam, or at least I wanted the Islam to take over Europe and the people of color to take over. I wanted race mixing. But then I thought eventually just destroy all religion. And what I wanted was, and this is why I wrote about it on INTP Central, what I was saying is, let's create a four-caste society where we'll get rid of, race because everyone will mix. And I thought that, I was saying that religion is an epiphenomena of genetic Darwinism, and that's why different races adopt different religions. And I'm like, let's just all mix, and instead of being divided over race, we can be divided over personality types. So for instance, like there'll be the INTP personality type will be like one caste, or no, there'll be four castes, like the rational caste, which would be the NTs, the Guardians, the SJs, the NF idealists, and the SP artisans. But my main agenda though was and I even, this is a crazy thing, I even thought of myself like, maybe one way that I could destroy the Christians and destroy the European Christians is I could give them all a mark on their forehead. Like I was like thinking, like I was satanic, and I was like, maybe I could do like the Antichrist thing, but in my mind the Antichrist was actually the good guy, and give all the Europeans like a mark and it said because I watched this show by this guy named Wally. I forget his name, but he basically talked about how he thought that Islam was the Antichrist. And he said that the 666 is written on the forehead in the name of Allah, and then cross swords. And I thought, okay, we'll make the cross swords a cross. So a quadrant. So I thought in the name of Allah and then quadrant. And I thought if people wrote that on, I could get all the Christians, or I could get all the Muslims to write that on their forehead, because they would see the quadrant as representing the four castes of the society, right? Like, but then the Christians wouldn't want to do it, and then you could just kill all the white Christians. That's the way I saw it. and then you can make everybody race mix, because I always saw the white people as the biggest threat. So basically, I was satanic. I wanted to just destroy Christianity. I wanted to destroy the white people. And like, and I'll give like one more example of that. Like, I looked at the story of what's the guy's name? Laban and Jacob. And Jacob takes Laban's idols. And Jacob's wife sits on the idols, so she kind of bleeds period blood on them. Probably. Or no, she said she was having a period, so she sits on them. But he takes his idols after Laban kind of persecutes him. And the word Laban means white. And I was like, see, Laban is the capitalist oppressor. And he worships idols, and idols represents the capitalist, he represents the white people, the Christians. The capitalist white people, the Christians, and Jacob takes the idols. And also, Laban exploited him like the white people exploit the people of color. But Jacob defeats him. He out-tricks Laban, and then he takes his idols. And I was like, yeah, this is representative of the destruction of Christianity, which I was like, it's this idol worship. And so I did want Islam to take over, but I really just wanted to defeat the white people and race mix them. And so then, Jacob takes all the idols, and I was like, yeah, this is representative of the Marxist revolution, and the Bible's really Marxist, and it's communist, and I wanted to see it as anti-white. Now, it's kind of crazy, but this is the way I saw it. And so basically but I didn't realize it at the time. I thought that I was doing the right thing, because I thought the Bible really was anti-white, and I really did think it was, for, just pro-Jewish and pro-people of color. But now I realize I was satanic, because I studied Hinduism, and in Hinduism I was basically Shukracharya, who's Satan, the morning star. He's the planet Venus, and that's the morning star. That's Satan, and he's a guru of the demons. And he wants the Dravidians to overtake the Aryans, and he wants to stop idol worship of the Aryans. But Vishnu allows it, but then Vishnu ultimately says, no, you should be allowed to worship idols. You should be allowed to worship like Indra and stuff. And like my grandpa would say later, he would say that, people who worship idols, they can get in the flow, and someone who's not worshiping idols, they can maybe not get in the flow. And people who worship idols, they can get in the flow. So there is no formula for the flow. And that's kind of what the Hindu mythology is trying to say. But I didn't realize that I wasn't in the flow. I thought that I was in the flow, but I wasn't. I was expressing dualistic predator-prey software toward white people. It's kind of crazy. But then so I'll describe how my, just a little bit more of my grandpa's teachings. So, like I said, at one point I did become more right-wing and pro-white. And like during that period, I remember I went to I was studying an Orthodox Jewish place in San Diego, and the rabbi was talking about how idol worship, he said the reason why you allow monuments but you don't allow idols is because monuments, you can build upon them, but idols you can't. And that's like, you can build upon your, and that's a metaphor of your consciousness. You want to constantly expand it and constantly grow and not get ossified. So the idea is like that idol worship might not necessarily be bad. You could still get in the flow with idol worship, but it's a metaphor. So I like that idea, because when I was against idol worship, I was against Christianity, and I wanted to get the Muslim. I wanted the Muslims to overtake Europe. I wanted the brown people, the black people to overtake Europe, and I wanted to race mix, and I wanted to be like, yeah, they're the idol worshipers. They worship Jesus, but that's an idol. They don't realize that everything is energy, like my grandpa teaches and stuff. But I didn't realize that I wasn't in the flow, and that as someone who worships idols, he may be in the flow. But my point is, I was a Marxist. I was an anti-white Marxist. But ultimately, like I said, I didn't even like Islam. I didn't like any religion. I thought that all religion just divides people and was conservative and maintains white supremacy. But I did prefer Islam because it was more represented by black people, and I wanted the black people to overtake the Christians, who were more representative of white people. Basically, I just wanted race mixing, and I wanted to defeat the white race. And I think it's because I saw myself as Jewish, and I saw white people as the biggest threat. But okay, so here's some of the stuff that my grandpa taught me, though. My grandpa taught me stuff like, okay, so I was studying the Kabbalah, the tree of life, and they have like different Sephiroth, and one of the Sephiroth is justice, and on the other side it's mercy. These are 2 Sephiroths. And I'm like, what does this mean? And my grandpa said that it could represent in the flow, there's no formula. Sometimes in the flow there's justice, and sometimes you choose mercy, but there's no formula. So this is what my grandpa taught. My grandpa taught that you don't want to be a good person because the person is an illusion. There is no person. There is no thing. But my grandpa taught that you want to be a beneficial presence. Because if you're trying to be a good person, again, that's your ego. I want to be a good person. I see myself as Jewish. I want to be a good person. I'll help out the Muslims, but I have an ego agenda to get the Muslims to overtake the white people and overtake Europe because I think that white people are the biggest threat. That's the way that I thought I was a good person. Oh, I want to help. I want open borders. I'm a good person. I'm a good person. As I say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I was a good person. Oh, I want to give to the poor, but you give to the poor, they end up doing drugs and they end up, dying, and they end up, giving to the poor isn't necessarily good. But I'm a good person. No, you don't want to be a good person. As my grandpa says, you want to transcend the self. So I thought I was a good person. Like, oh, the Bible says, the Bible's communist. I'm a good person. I want to help out the black people. I'm a good person. I had an ego agenda. I wasn't necessarily a good person. And also I'm conditioned by, all my teachings and stuff that I've been conditioned with. Might not necessarily be the truth. So you want to transcend the self so you can be open to the truth. Transcend the ego, the limitations and all that. So my grandpa said, you don't want to be a good person, you want to be a beneficial presence. And the way you can be a beneficial presence, one of the ways my grandpa says is through Orthodox Judaism, or any religion. Like my grandpa would even say the Orthodox Catholicism, where they're doing their rituals and stuff. You take yourself outside of yourself, and by doing the rituals and stuff, and the rituals point you to the flow, and doing the rituals, it takes you outside of yourself, and then it can make you more receptive to the flow, to inspiration, to intuition. So, and then when you're in the flow, then you can discern when it's good to give. I remember I asked my grandpa, because there was this Orthodox Jew who said that you should always, every time you see another Jew, you should give him at least a quarter. And I was like, what do you think about that, Grandpa? And my grandpa said, as a ritual, it's beneficial, but it's not to be a good person. He said, again, any ritual helps take you outside of yourself. But giving, I'm going to get to this later, but my grandpa say, giving is not, so some people will give because they want to please God. But my grandpa, again, would say that's self-confirmatory. Oh, you want to please God? You think that there's a separate God that you can please that has emotions? Then you still are trying to save the self. You still believe that you are a self. My grandpa would say, the only benefit of giving is it helps you to let go of your attachment so that you can become more receptive to the flow. Because when you're in the flow, there is no attachment. Because if you're attached to anything, you can't be in the flow. If you're attached and you are looking for an outcome, you have goals and stuff, then how are you going to be open to what my grandpa calls expectancy? He says, don't expect things, but be in a state of expectancy, of expecting the flow. But you don't expect the flow. It's a state of expectancy where you're open to the flow. But you can't make it happen. So, and again, someone who gives, he's not necessarily going to get in the flow. He's not necessarily going to transcend himself. So my grandpa would say, there is no formula for the flow. But, so you don't want to be a good person, you want to be a beneficial presence. And by presence, you're transcending the person, the ego, the self. So you can be receptive to the flow. Let me think of other things my grandpa told me. Like the story of Job too. Like I said, I wanted to think the reason why Job, because when I was a Marxist, I wanted to be against belief because I wanted to destroy Christianity. I wanted to destroy religion. So I was like, yeah, the reason, you see, the Jews never believe in the Bible. It always says the Jews never believe. But I was like, that's a good thing because belief is not the flow. And that's why they're the chosen people. Because I wanted to subvert everything. But I was like, Job, in the book of Job, he believes, but then he ends up being destroyed. And I was like, see, because, it's like, the Christians who believe and they were destroyed, or like these other groups that believed, Like it says even the Egyptians, or like the Romans who believed, or it says even in the Bible, the Egyptians believed in God, and then, but they were destroyed, right? But then the Israelites were saved. So I'm like, see, belief is not the flow, because belief is an attachment. Now, Dr. Hora, I would later read in his books, he would say whenever it says belief in a lot of places in the Bible, it's actually understand. It's a mistranslation. But they believed. And I'm like, see, belief is not the flow. But the Israelites don't believe, and that's good. And that's why, but then they have to do a sacrifice because they sin, because they don't believe they sin. But I was like, but that's good because they're thinking, they're not stuck in belief, they're not stuck in conformity, and nonconformity can be closer to the flow. Because if you're stuck in, as my grandpa taught, if you're stuck in conformity, you can get social approbation, you can get stuck there and never get into the flow and never transcend the self. So I wanted to be like, yeah, Job, he believed, and that's why he was destroyed. And just like, the Romans who believed, and then they were destroyed, or the Egyptians who believed, but then they were destroyed because it says they believed in God and then they were destroyed. Or the Ninevites, so on and so forth. I wanted to believe, because I wanted to destroy religion. I wanted to destroy the idea of belief. And, but now I understand, like, even in that story, it's kind of satanic in that, it was Satan who told God, he was like, test Job, see if his belief is authentic. He might not really believe in you. He might just want good things. So, and that's the way that I was like a Satanist. Like I was like Nietzsche, like the religious people don't really believe in God. They just want, they just want, it's just good for their genes, and that's why they do it. It's instinctual, okay? But what my grandpa taught me about the book of Job is my grandpa was like, well, Job never, like he has the comforters, but he never accepts what the comforters say. He stays in inquiry. My grandpa says Job stays in inquiry. And at the end, Job says, before I have heard about God, but now I see. And my grandpa says he got in the flow. That Job never accepted the answers and the formulas that his comforters were trying to give him, and he maintained him. He stayed in inquiry, and then he was able to get in the flow and see the truth. And that's when he sees God, and then he's like, before I had heard, but now I see. Then he became in the flow. So that's what my grandpa taught me. So, my grandpa's teaching me all this type of stuff. And like I said, this is the thing. My grandpa was trying to also break me out of, because like I wanted to believe in Darwinism. I wanted to believe that Christianity was just a Darwinian trick to save the Jews by converting the enemy to a religion that was pro-Jewish. It was I thought it was deception. And I said, look, in the animal kingdom, there's a lot of deception, and that's what the Jews did. It was deception, and I want to see humans as like animals. And I asked my grandpa, I was like, well, Grandpa, how do you explain why is it that men are not picky with women and they'll have sex with more women, but women are more picky? And I said, it's because of Darwinism, because women want to have the men with the best genes. It's instinctual. I was like, instinctual. And men want to spread their genes the most, because women, they can only have one baby every 9 months, but men can have 1,000 babies. So, but my grandpa was like, it's not Darwinism necessarily. See, my grandpa's trying to, because if I believe in Darwinism, then I can justify that animal-like behavior. Well, my grandpa would say predator-prey behavior, where I will just use women to try to spread my genes. That's predatory. That's what my grandpa said, restrictive consciousness. But what my grandpa would say is, no, that it's the reason why a lot of men and a lot of women do it that way is because a lot of those men and women are in dualistic superior, inferior software. And the man wants to be superior by having as many babies as possible, and the woman wants to be superior by having the best babies. And to say it's just instinct, if you just believe that it's an instinct and you believe in Darwinism, then you can justify it and resign to that mode of being, which is still dualistic. But he said, my grandpa says, humans are not animals. We're not even humans, my grandpa says. We are energy, and there is no, it's not even humans, but we are not animals. Animals function based off of instinct, but my grandpa would say that we can upgrade our software to the flow, and from being a good person to a beneficial presence, being a person to a presence, to beneficial presence to the flow. So I'm gonna get more later.